From above, the city unfurled in terraces of living glass and braids of vine metal, towers swaying on engineered routes that drank light as easily as water. Skyways curled between them like silk ribbons, carrying gliders and hoverboards, and the occasional great-winged migrant whose feathers caught the morning suns. Bioluminescent moss pulsed a soft cadence along walkways. Pollinator drones drifted in slow spirals, humming a counterpoint to the distant music of the transit rails. Sophie Reynolds stepped from the lift pod into this green-lit morning, and the city seemed to lean toward her. She wore what she always wore, emerald tunic layered beneath a long leaf-sheathed coat whose weave shifted with the angle of the light, and she moved with the precise grace of one raised among boughs and bridges. Her hair, a tangle of wildfire red, had escaped the binding ring at her nape and spilled across one shoulder. She left it. Aetheryon liked a little wildness. So did she. Around her, species braided without friction. A myrrh artisan with opalescent skin hung wind harps on a balcony of grown crystal. A thal trader, scales patterned like hammered bronze, negotiated quietly with a human vendor over seed chips and microclimate modules. An elfling raced past on bare feet, laughter chiming in the humid air. Year 3500 had taught the galaxy this: survival favored symbiosis, and Aetheryon had made an art of it. The necklace at Sophie's throat pulsed once, then again, like a small heart remembering its rhythm. She paused at the edge of a sky bridge and touched the pendant through her collar. It was not especially ornate, a seed-sized gem, green shot through with threads of gold, cradled in a lattice of living metal that had never quite stopped growing. Her mother's keepsake, her mother's last bequest. Today the gem was singing, not aloud. Not in any way a sensor could quantify. The melody rose in her bones and in the fine tips of her ears. It breathed across the back of her tongue like cool rain and told her to listen. Sophie. The voice vibrated inside the stone and inside her mind at once, syllables sketched in light. She'd heard whispers before, flickers, impressions, flicked. Shadows of thought, but never as clear as this. "I hear you," she murmured, ignoring the curious glance of a passing courier. "What changed?" No answer came, only a lingering note and a tug, an almost physical pull that suggested a direction rather than pointing one. She let the tide of pedestrians carry her, letting the city arrange its patterns around her gate. The sky bridge arced toward the Verdant Archives, where she worked as a conservator of living memory. Songwood cylinders that recorded scent and sound, root nets that kept history and pulse and sap. It had always been the right place for her, caretaker for things that spoke softly. But the pendant's insistence pulled her past the archive's broad leaf-etched doors and down into the market terraces, where the air thickened under hanging. Gardens and steam from boiling spore broth. The song grew stronger when she passed the council plaza. There, beneath an open canopy of glass leaves, the city's tri-species council chamber unfurled like a lily, petals poised to admit delegates, and grievances in equal measure. Security drones hovered like fat bees just above the edge of sight. Banners streamed, human, elf, and alien glyphs, woven into one river of color, and the plaza stones thrummed with the footfalls of 100 worlds. The pendant flared, not bright enough for anyone else to notice, but to Sophie it was a sudden breath. A hand braced between shoulder blades. "Easy," she whispered. "I'm not walking into the council in my work coat." "Sophie Reynolds," a voice asked, warm with curiosity and the faint music of coastal Terran vowels. She turned. The man standing a polite distance away wore the subtle uniform of a human diplomatic corps, slate coat, understated crest, the sort of boots he could run in if he had to, dark hair, eyes like storm glass, a faint scruff that said he'd been up late reading briefs or arguing with someone who mistook stubbornness for policy. "I'm Ethan Cale," he said when she didn't respond at once. He offered the kind of smile that practiced diplomacy tries to smooth into harmlessness, and almost succeeded. "You're with the Verdant Archives, yes?" "So they tell me," she said. "And you're with the Consular Assembly." His smile tipped wry. "Guilty? I was advised to seek the archivist with leaves in her sleeves if I wanted any reliable sense of Aetherion's history that wasn't scoured by politics." Sophie felt her mouth move into a traitorous half-smile. "And how did the poet who gave you that advice expect you to identify me among the 300 archivists with leaves in their sleeves?" "The red hair was a strong hint," he said, and then, after a beat, as if remembering an earlier rehearsed line, "and the fact that your colleagues pointed me at the first sign of a question." The pendant thrummed in approval or laughter. She couldn't tell. The song had shifted timbre, less command, more curiosity. It vibrated again when Ethan's gaze slid, just briefly, to the green spark at her throat. "May I ask?" he began, decorous. "No," she said, equally decorous. "Not yet." A siren cut the air. Sophie and Ethan pivoted as one. A courier drone had spiraled out of the low sky, its guidance light stuttering. It struck the edge of a vendor's stall and skidding along the plaza stones, shedding crates, seed chips scattering like petals. The crowd surged away. Security drones tightened formation with insect briskness. Sophie was already moving. She slid under a descending rail of signage, boots finding purchase on damp stone, sleeves catching the spin of a crate just before it slipped into the open channel that fed the plaza's irrigation threads. The drone sputtered a final arc of sparks and lay smoking. Ethan reached her in 3 long strides, bracing the crate with his shoulder while she righted it with a grunt. He looked less like a diplomat now and more like someone who had learned. The feel of a crisis, which he tucked away to think about later. "Are you hurt?" he asked, not breathless. "Not yet," she said. And then wry, "Though I may have bruised my dignity." Someone cheered, someone else cursed. Security drones finished their dance and began politely herding people away. A human vendor with grease under his nails pressed a handful of seed chips into Sophie's palm in thanks, which she returned with a nod and a smile she meant. Only when the plaza settled did she become aware of the pendant's hum again, low and deliberate, like the last note of a song that refused to resolve. "There!" It breathed. "The door that is not a door." Sophie blinked, pulse skipping. "A door? Where?" The gem warmed. Her gaze was pulled, not to the council chamber, not to the archives, but to a narrow seam between 2 slabs of living stone where a wall should have been unbroken. The seam wasn't visible so much as felt. It pressed against perception, the way a misplaced step does, the wrongness gentle and insistent. Ethan followed her look. "You see it too," he said, not a question. She almost denied it by reflex, then decided she did not want to. "I see a place that wants to be seen," she said, stepping closer. Up close, the walls seemed to breathe in a rhythm a fraction of the city's. A faint scent of rain threaded through the mineral smell, green as first growth. He stood beside her, careful not to crowd. "There's no entrance on the maps," he murmured. "I checked. Security is strict around council, nothing unregistered." "And yet," she said. She pressed her palm to the stone. It yielded softly, the way a muscle relaxes beneath a healer's touch. The pendant warmed to heat. She felt her pulse relay through it and back, a loop. "Not now," whispered the voice in the gem, urgent and tender at once. Watched. Sophie's hand stilled. She let herself turn, slow as a leaf falling. Across the plaza, beneath the petal shadow of the council canopy, stood a woman watching with the stillness of a blade laid flat on velvet. White hair coiled in a crown that made the pale planes of her face sharper. Irises tinted pale amethyst too calm. No insignia on her coat, which meant her authority did not require one. Their gazes met. The woman's mouth curved by a precise degree. Then she was gone, swallowed by cloth and crowd and the breath of Aetheryon, as if she had only ever been an idea the city was trying on. Ethan exhaled. "Friend of yours?" "Not yet," Sophie said, and slipped her hand from the living stone. He studied her face, weighing questions against judgment and finding the former better company. "The council convenes at midday," he said. "There will be theatrics. If you want a quieter view, there's a balcony in the archive wing the caretakers pretend is broken. I could—" "Show me?" she finished, and surprised herself by saying, "Yes?" The pendant cooled, though the song did not end. It became a thread she carried in her chest as they walked the curve of the plaza together, past banners and bioluminescent gardens and a mural that changed expression when you weren't looking. A seed chip chimed once in her pocket. The vendors. Gratitude had smuggled itself back to her. She smiled and left it. At the base of the archive wing, Ethan palmed a maintenance panel with a practiced ease that suggested diplomacy sometimes required access to places maps didn't acknowledge. A narrow stair rose between grown roots. They climbed in companionable silence, broken only by the sound of the city, bells made from water, laughter braided into the whistle of a distant rail, a hawker declaring the virtues of grown glass tea. Balcony, when it opened beneath them, tasted like oxygen. You could see everything from here, the council lily, poised, the plaza, a mosaic alive, the seam in the wall, no longer visible, but not gone. Sophie leaned her elbows on the living rail, and let Aetherion's pulse find hers. Ethan did not pretend not to look at her pendant. He did not ask. She did not volunteer. Something like an accord settled between them. "Heart that listens." The whisper breathed from the gem, quiet as sap moving. "Two paths are leaves on, the same branch. Choose one, and the wind changes. The other will not wait." Sophie closed her eyes against the melancholy of that, and also the thrill. "When you stood by that seam," Ethan said softly, "you looked as if you were hearing. A piece of music you'd almost forgotten?" "I was," she said, and opened her eyes to the city shaped like a promise. "But it isn't finished yet. Somewhere below, hidden in the stone, a door that wasn't a door. Somewhere in the weave of banners, a woman whose gaze felt like frost. And here, beside her on a balcony, the caretakers pretended did not exist. A human diplomat who didn't flinch when the world shifted underfoot. The pendant's pulse settled into a new rhythm. The song had begun. The council chamber of Aetheryon Prime was a marvel of intention and illusion. It rose from the city's heart like a lotus of glass leaves and living vines, each petal a floor, each floor a realm unto itself. Sunlight, or what passed for the three suns of this sector, caught the crystal latticework, refracting emerald, amethyst, and gold into the faces of delegates, making every expression glow like a secret waiting to be discovered. Sophie Reynolds moved through the outer corridors with quiet assurance. Her emerald tunic whispered against the polished floor, her hair a ribbon of flame catching stray light. Today the council would convene, and she was not a member, but the pendant at her throat pulled her inexorably closer. The voice within hummed, urgent and insistent. The balance shifts. It breathed. "She comes. Watch the shadow." She paused at the top of the spiraling stair that led to the chamber's inner ring. Beyond, the hall stretched wider than any forest glade she had ever known, and alive with subtle motion. Aliens from the Harkessian nebula, humans, elves, faces she had catalogued in her memory, yet never looked at this closely, moved with purpose. Murmurs echoed against walls of living crystal, carrying tones of distrust and intrigue in equal measure, and then she saw her. Natasha Vera. White hair coiled like a crown, pale amethyst eyes glinting in the prismatic light. She moved. With the calm precision of a predator threading a garden maze, her steps measured to the microsecond. Sophie's pendant pulsed sharply, the whisper's voice, low and dangerous, threaded through her thoughts. "Observe, do not act. The shadow tests the light." Sophie's fingers brushed the edge of her cloak as she descended into the council ring. She noticed, without moving her eyes, the way Natasha subtly redirected a delegate's gesture, how her smile never quite reached the eyes, and how the room seemed to bend around her influence. Every whisper in the hall seemed to circle back to Natasha, carrying subtle commands disguised as conversation. "Miss Reynolds," a familiar voice called. Sophie turned to find Ethan Cale waiting near a floating data orb. His expression was calm, but the glimmer in his eyes suggested he had noticed the same things she had. "I take it the chamber is inspiring, as always." "Inspiring?" Sophie's lips twitched. "If by inspiring you mean a stage for diplomacy and concealed ambition, then yes, very inspiring." Ethan chuckled softly, but his gaze flicked instinctively toward Natasha, who was now engaging with an elder elf delegate in a negotiation so subtle, Sophie suspected the words spoken were only half the truth. The other half existed in gesture, glance, and posture. "You've been warned," Sophie murmured, more to herself than to Ethan. "She is not to be underestimated." He inclined his head, understanding the weight of her tone. "I've noticed." The council convened, their deliberations carried out in the flowing, harmonic language of the elves, interlaced with the clipped, precise syllables of humans, and the resonant musical intonations of alien tongues. Sophie remained at the balcony edge, listening, cataloging, recording, not in data chips, but in memory and instinct. Every word, every inflection mattered. Natasha spoke last, as she always did, her voice a soft melody that threaded through the chamber, compelling attention without commanding it. She addressed a dispute over interstellar resource allocation, a matter mundane to an outsider, but her phrasing contained layers. Every compliment, every correction, every polite rebuke was a calculated ripple, moving delegates into positions advantageous to her designs. Sophie felt her pendant warm. The whisper's voice vibrated urgent. "The shadow is laying its trap. She will test your heart and the heart of him who walks at your side." Ethan noticed the change before Sophie had. "Time to act." "Something wrong?" he asked, eyes scanning the room as if the pulse he sensed in her was a physical entity. Sophie shook her head slightly. "No, just careful observation." She kept her fingers against the gem at her throat. "There's more going on than council matters today." Minutes stretched into hours. The discussions grew heated, small disagreements flaring into tempests of rhetoric, until the chamber itself seemed to vibrate with the tension. Natasha's gaze, brief and deliberate, met Sophie's across the room, and Sophie felt the calculated weight of that look settle into her chest like a stone. It was a challenge. A silent invitation into a game Sophie did not yet fully understand, though the whisper assured her she would. After the session ended, the delegates dispersed into corridors, alive with the scent of bioluminescent blooms and polished stone. Sophie and Ethan followed the subtle trail of Natasha's influence, which lingered in the air like ozone after a storm. "She's dangerous," Sophie said finally, voice low, almost a whisper in the vast hall. "And she knows you're involved." Somehow, Ethan frowned. "Involved? You mean with the pendant?" "I mean with me," Sophie said. Her words hung, unspoken yet fully articulated in the charged silence between them. The gem pulsed warmly, approving, cautioning, anticipating. Ethan's jaw tightened fractionally. "We'll have to be careful, not just with the council, but with her." They moved down the spiral stair into the corridors beneath the chamber, the city's life humbling and vast around them. The whispers of the past, recorded in Sophie's careful memory, felt alive today, warning her, guiding her, shaping her next move. Somewhere above in the upper rings of the council, Natasha watched. Again her pale eyes unreadable, lips curved with a secret that only Sophie seemed destined to discover, and somewhere, deep within the pendant, the whisper thrummed. "The first move has been made. The shadow plays. Prepare, child of emerald light. The game has begun." Sophie tightened her grip on the gem, feeling the pulse of the city, the council, and the shadow. Entwined. She could not yet see the full board, but she could sense the edges, the pieces moving in subtle, invisible patterns. And she knew with a shiver that when the next move came, nothing would be as it seemed. The Emerald Song had begun. The city of Aetheryon Prime was quieter at night, though quiet in the year 3500 was always relative. Bioluminescent veins in the living stone pulsed slowly, painting terraces in soft, shifting emerald light. Hovercars hummed faintly along. Upper spires, distant laughter echoed through skyways, and somewhere a Mer artisan tuned a crystal harp to the resonance of a hidden stream. Sophie Reynolds moved among it all, unnoticed yet ever present, her red hair like a flame against the deep green of her tunic. The pendant at her throat thrummed, insistent and intimate, guiding her through narrow alleys of bioluminescent ferns and root-woven bridges. It was calling her, not with words she could understand, but with emotion and pulse, with a vibration that sang directly into her bones. "The past speaks," it murmured. "Listen closely, child of the emerald light." Sophie's fingers brushed the gem. Her pulse quickened. She had walked these corridors 1,000 times, catalogued every curve of stone and vine, yet tonight the city itself seemed to shift, subtle and deliberate, as though aware of her purpose. The archives lay at the heart of Aetheryon Prime, a labyrinth of crystal towers intertwined with living wood. Each tower held records older than any human memory, older even than the elf settlers who had arrived centuries ago. Sophie stepped into the grand hall of archives, the scent of damp rootwood and ink filling her senses. The central chamber's light reflected off layers of woven glass and living sap, casting shifting patterns across the polished floor. And there it was, a cylinder she had never catalogued before, lying quietly on a pedestal of coiled vine metal. It glowed faintly from within, humming with a resonance she recognized instantly, the same cadence as her pendant. "You have come," the whisper breathed, as though speaking from both gem and cylinder simultaneously. Sophie's heart skipped. The cylinder was ancient, older than the earliest memory records she had ever handled. Its surface rippled like liquid emerald, patterns of glyphs twisting and folding back upon themselves in a language long thought lost. Yet somehow she understood fragments, vibrations, tones, suggestions, enough to know it held a story, one that would explain both the past and the uncertain future of her world. Ethan Cale stepped quietly behind her. "You're not touching it yet, are you?" His voice was low, cautious. Even in this city of wonders, some artifacts were dangerous. "I don't think it's a simple object," Sophie said, eyes locked on the cylinder. "It speaks, like the pendant. I feel it in my bones." He glanced at the gem at her throat, then back at the cylinder. "The council doesn't know about this, does it?" Sophie shook her head. "Not yet. I'm not sure anyone should. Something old is waking, and if Natasha senses it—" Her words trailed, the thought unfinished but unneeded. The whisper pulsed urgently, vibrating against her chest. "No, child of emerald light. The key lies in the memory of the first. Star, seek the echoes of Cale, the human who follows you, for in him is the reflection of what was lost." Sophie turned to Ethan, startled. "Did you feel that?" He nodded slowly, brow furrowed. "I think so. Some resonance. Like a memory not mine, but somehow I carry it." The cylinder reacted to the recognition, spiraling light up its sides, illuminating the glyphs in a cascade of emerald brilliance. The air thickened, charged with energy that tasted of ozone and rain. Sophie stepped closer, careful, reverent, feeling the vibrations in her chest and fingertips. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows of the archives. Upper galleries, Natasha Vera, pale, white-haired, and silent as a ghost, her amethyst eyes fixed on Sophie and the cylinder. "You're meddling with things you do not understand, Sophie." Natasha's voice was soft, almost melodic. yet every syllable carried a warning sharp as a knife. "Do you think your little pendant can protect you from the past?" Sophie's fingers tightened on her gem. "It's not protection I seek, it's understanding." Natasha smiled faintly, coldly. "Then be warned. Some understanding comes at a cost, and some truths." She let the pause stretch, tilting her head to one side. "Och, are better left buried." Before Sophie could respond, Natasha slipped back into the shadows, leaving only the echo of her presence and the faint shimmer of danger. Ethan exhaled sharply. "She's going to be a problem." Sophie nodded, eyes on the cylinder. "More than a problem." "She's a storm waiting to break." The whisper thrummed again. "The first star, the reflection of Kyle. The past is not past. Choose wisely, child of emerald light, for love and destiny entwine, and the shadow watches every heartbeat." Sophie took a deep breath, letting the energy of the cylinder, the city, and her pendant settle into her bones. This was no ordinary night. She could feel the threads of fate stretching taut across Aetheryon Prime, and at the center she and Ethan stood unknowingly poised to pull at them. "Are you ready?" Ethan asked, voice low, eyes searching hers. "For what?" she whispered. "For whatever comes next," he said, "and I think it starts now." Together they reached toward the cylinder. As their fingers brushed the smooth, living surface, the archives itself seemed to hold its breath, the glow of the cylinder intensifying, and the emerald whisper sang through Sophie's mind, louder than ever. "The past awakens, the game begins. Choose wisely, child of emerald light, for shadows and love are not what they seem." And in that song Sophie felt the weight of centuries and the pull of destinies yet to unfold. The sun, or what approximated a sun on Aetheryon Prime, had barely risen above the lattice of living towers when Sophie Reynolds felt the first tremor of unease. The pendant at her throat pulsed softly, like a heartbeat echoing a distant warning. She moved through the upper terraces of the verdant archives, her green tunic blending seamlessly with the bioluminescent mosses and woven foliage that lined every walkway. The city below hummed with its usual symphony, the buzz of hovercrafts, the faint resonance of root-borne trains, and the melodic chatter of 100 languages intertwined in a harmony uniquely Aetherian. Yet, beneath that harmony, Sophie sensed the discord. Her thoughts drifted back to Natasha, the white-haired enigma who had watched her in the council chamber and vanished as if she had been nothing more than a whisper of wind. Something about Natasha unsettled Sophie, the way shadows seemed to cling to her movements, the subtle manipulation of attention, the way even the air seemed to bend around her presence. The pendant pulsed again, a warning, a call, a thread. Connecting past and present, Ethan Kyle met her at the balcony entrance, his expression taut. "Something's off," he said, his hand brushing against the edge of the balcony rail, fingers brushing the living wood. "The council archives are unusually quiet this morning, too quiet." Sophie's eyes scanned the terrace. "Quiet isn't a bad thing. It means she's planning, watching. The danger is in what we can't see." They descended together, gliding down terraces and stairways woven from roots and vines, until they reached the lower galleries, spaces where the air was thick with the scent of sap and the metallic tang of aged crystal. It was here, amid towers of songwood cylinders and living data conduits, that the first sign of intrusion revealed itself, a faint distortion in the light, a shimmer along the polished stone floor. Natasha. She appeared from nowhere, or from everywhere. At once, her presence folding the corridors in subtle ways that made even seasoned archivists glance twice. Her amethyst eyes found Sophie's, and the city seemed to shift around her, vines twisting subtly, light bending, shadows coiling. "You shouldn't be here," Natasha said, voice low but sharp, carrying the weight of command without the need for formal authority. "This part of the archives is restricted. Even for an archivist, some doors are not meant to be opened. Sophie's hand instinctively went to the pendant. I'm not here to take. I'm here to understand. Natasha tilted her head, a shadow of a smile brushing her lips. Understanding can be dangerous. Curiosity has a price, Sophie, and some prices are higher than even an elf can pay. Ethan stepped forward, voice calm but firm. We are not here to steal anything. We only seek knowledge, knowledge that could affect the balance of the city. Natasha's gaze flicked to him, measuring, evaluating. Ah, and there is the human, the one who shadows you, unaware that his own destiny is now entwined. She let the word hang, her tone deliberate, leaving a chill in its wake. Sophie felt a ripple of unease, but also a spark of defiance. Then perhaps it is destiny that guides us, rather than fear. The white-haired elf's eyes narrowed. Destiny, yes. But destiny is a puzzle with pieces that bite. You may find that the pieces you hold are poisoned. Without another word, Natasha glided past them, her movements so fluid they seemed unreal. She vanished around a bend, leaving only the faintest trace of ozone and a whisper in the air, as if the corridor itself sighed. The pendant thrummed once, sharply. Sophie touched it, feeling the vibration run up her arm. She is testing you, the whisper intoned. Observe, learn, survive. Ethan turned to Sophie, expression serious. We need to follow carefully. If she's already here, she's setting traps we can't see yet. They moved silently, tracing subtle shifts in the corridor. A vine that had turned slightly to face them. A pulse of light along the crystal floor. The faint sound of someone breathing somewhere ahead, but not close enough to detect clearly. Sophie's heart beat in sync with the pendant. Every vibration was a guide, a compass pointing toward the hidden, the unseen. At the end of the corridor they found a door that shimmered faintly in the peripheral vision, as if reality itself hesitated before the threshold. It was not a door marked on any archive map, not a doorway in the sense of architecture, but a seam in the living walls that pulsed with energy. Sophie reached out, fingers hovering. The pendant flared warmly, urging her forward, yet caution throbbed in her chest. Ethan's hand brushed hers. Together? He asked, voice a whisper. Sophie nodded. Together. As they pressed forward, the seam rippled like liquid, and a soft hum filled the air, resonant, alive, and impossibly old. Beyond it lay a room bathed in emerald light, walls etched with histories that predated the first settlers, the first treaties, even the first songs of Aetheryon. The air vibrated with the whispers of civilizations long gone, of choices made and unmade, and in the center of the room, illuminated by a shaft of unnatural light, stood a figure that made Sophie's breath catch. Natasha already there, her back straight, hands raised toward a crystalline console, her expression calm but unreadable. You're persistent, Natasha said without turning, voice carrying over the hum of the room. I admire that. But understand this. Knowledge is not neutral. Every truth has a cost, and some costs. She turned, finally meeting Sophie's gaze directly. Cannot be undone, Sophie swallowed, feeling the pendant pulse with urgency. Then show me the cost, she said, voice steady despite the surge of adrenaline. Natasha's amethyst. Eyes glimmered. Oh, it will be shown, in time. But first, you must understand that even shadows can hold love, and love can blind the heart. The room vibrated, the light bending, the histories whispering. Sophie knew then that she had stepped fully into a game far larger than she had imagined. A game in which every ally might carry a secret, every shadow a hidden blade, and every heartbeat a choice that could reshape the very future of Aetheryon Prime. The whisper in her pendant sang softly, Observe the shadow, child of emerald light. The heart of the unseen is not what it seems, and the game has only just begun. The hidden chamber beneath the archives thrummed with a quiet life of its own. Light, emerald, soft and almost sentient, coursed along the crystalline walls, casting shadows that twisted and swayed like specters. Sophie Reynolds stepped carefully, her red hair catching the glow of the living architecture, each step a measured echo in the cavernous space. Her green tunic blended perfectly with the ambient light, as though the city itself sought to shield her. Ethan Cale followed close, silent, but alert. His human senses could detect subtle variations in pressure, temperature, and resonance that even Sophie's pendant did not immediately convey. "This place, it feels alive," he murmured, running a hand along the edge of a crystalline console. "Not like the archives above, this is something else." Sophie's fingers brushed the pendant. The whisper hummed urgently, threading thoughts and warnings directly into her mind. "The chamber knows you. It tests, it remembers, it judges. The first truth lies beneath the light." They moved toward the center of the room. Here the floor opened into a shallow basin filled with a liquid that seemed to reflect more than just light. Memories, echoes, and potential futures shimmered in its surface. The pendant pulsed in response, a steady heartbeat that guided Sophie closer. Natasha Vera appeared almost instantly, stepping from the shadows as if she had been folded into the room itself. Her white hair glowed faintly in the emerald illumination, and her amethyst eyes bore into Sophie's. "So predictable," she said softly. "I should have expected you to follow." Sophie squared her shoulders. "I need to understand. I need to know what you're hiding." Natasha's lips curved into a faint, almost indulgent smile. "Knowledge is not a gift. It is a responsibility, and sometimes a curse. The truths you seek are layered, intertwined with choices made centuries before you drew your first breath." Ethan stepped beside Sophie, his hand brushing against hers for reassurance. "We can handle responsibility," he said, voice firm. "But you're going to have to show us or step aside." The shadow in Natasha's eyes deepened. "Step aside?" she whispered. "Oh no, you're already part of this, whether you know it or not, and part of the cost is discovering who you are beneath the light." Sophie's eyes fell to the basin. Within its shimmering surface, scenes began to form. A city before humans and aliens had merged, elves walking untouched forests, stars being born, wars being waged in silence. Each image pulsed with resonance, and Sophie felt an almost unbearable connection, as though she were seeing not only the past, but threads of her own soul woven into it. "The past whispers through you." The whisper hummed urgently, "The heart of the shadow is closer than you think." A hand touched Sophie's shoulder. Ethan's eyes met hers, steady, grounding. "Whatever this is, we face it together," he said. Sophie nodded, drawing a deep breath. She reached into the basin, her fingers piercing the liquid surface. Images rippled, distorting, then sharpened into clarity. An elf of vibrant red hair, clad in green, standing at the edge of a shattered moon. She recognized the figure instantly. It was her, or rather, a version of herself from some distant timeline, one that had lived centuries before. Natasha's voice broke the moment. "You see it, don't you? The choices that bind us, the echoes that cannot be silenced. That moon, Arendor, was lost to pride, to love, to betrayal. And now, history threatens to repeat itself." Sophie withdrew her hand, chest heaving. "Then we need to stop it, whatever it takes." The pendant glowed fiercely. "The shadow moves through time, child of emerald light, the heart of love, the cost of betrayal. Choose wisely." Natasha tilted her head, her gaze unwavering. "Do you understand, Sophie? Every step you take, every decision you make, will echo across centuries. And in that echo, some hearts will break and some will ignite." Ethan's jaw clenched. "We don't have the luxury of fear. We move forward together." The air in the chamber pulsed with anticipation. Light twisted in spirals, shadows deepened, and the basin shimmered with untold potential. Sophie's fingers gripped the pendant, feeling the resonance of destiny thrumming in her veins. She could feel Natasha's watchful presence, the whispers, guiding pulse, and Ethan's unwavering strength. "Then we begin," Sophie said, voice steady, though her heart raced. "We uncover the secrets beneath the emerald light, no matter the cost." Natasha's eyes flickered with something unidentifiable, approval, amusement, danger, before she stepped back into the shadows, leaving Sophie and Ethan alone with the chamber's living memory. The whisper pulsed urgently one final time. "The first revelation is only the beginning. The shadow's heart beats nearby. Trust. But beware. Love and danger are inseparable in the light of the Emerald City." Sophie swallowed, letting the weight of history press against her chest, and knew that the journey through shadows and secrets had truly begun. The corridors of Aetheryon Prime seemed darker than usual, though the living walls pulsed with their constant emerald glow. Sophie Reynolds moved silently alongside Ethan Cale, every sense alert. The pendant throbbed against her chest, a heartbeat, guiding her, warning her, urging her forward. It was no longer merely a talisman. It had become a map tracing paths of intrigue and danger that only she could perceive. "Something's changed," Ethan murmured, eyes scanning the shifting shadows of the archive's lower levels. "I can feel it. The air, it's heavy, with intention." Sophie nodded, her gaze fixed on the faint shimmer of a hidden seam along the wall, one she hadn't noticed before. The shadow moves unseen. The whisper hummed, vibrating in her mind. "Betrayal threads through the city. Watch closely." They entered a narrow gallery, the air thick with the scent of bioluminescent moss and aged crystal. At the far end, a console projected faint holographic imagery, maps, documents, and records of a secret council chamber Sophie had never been permitted to access. And there, in the middle of the projected light, moved Natasha, her hands tracing the images with effortless precision. "She's planning something," Sophie whispered, fingers tightening on her pendant. "Something big. And she's using information we don't even know exists." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "We need to follow her trail carefully. One wrong move and she'll know we're here." The two elves and humans moved silently, weaving through corridors that seemed to bend subtly around Natasha's presence. Sophie noticed patterns, the way light shifted in her wake, the faint hum of energy that lingered in the air, the way shadows deepened slightly where she passed. Every detail was a thread, and Sophie could see the web being spun. Natasha paused, near a small alcove filled with living data crystals. She tilted her head, sensing something, but did not turn. Sophie could feel the pendant's pulse quicken. It was warning her that the moment of confrontation was near. "She's aware of us," Sophie whispered. "Not fully," Ethan replied, "but soon she will be. And when she is, we'll have to be ready for everything." From the alcove, Natasha extracted a crystal shard and held it close to her chest. Light flared, illuminating her pale features in sharp contrast against the emerald glow. Sophie realized with a shiver that this was no ordinary manipulation of records. Natasha was siphoning energy, pulling information not just from memory, but from the resonance of the archives themselves. The whisper hummed urgently. "The heart of betrayal is close. Watch the hand that moves shadows, child of emerald light. Trust not the surface of reality." Sophie exchanged a glance with Ethan. "We can't let her destabilize the archives," she said, voice low but resolute. "Whatever she's doing, it could affect everything, our city, our people, even the balance between humans, elves, and aliens." Ethan nodded. "Then we intervene carefully. We can't attack. We can't make her aware too soon. We have to unravel her plan first." They followed Natasha through a hidden passage that spiraled downward, deeper than any section of the archives Sophie had ever explored. The air grew colder, heavier, tinged with a metallic resonance that made her skin tingle. Here the walls were lined with crystal filaments that hummed faintly, recording every movement, every whisper. Sophie realized the danger. Natasha was not only manipulating information, she was weaving it into the fabric of the archives itself. Finally, they reached a chamber unlike any other, a subterranean vault carved into living stone and crystal. At the center stood a massive console pulsing with emerald and violet light. Natasha raised her hands above it, the shard in her grip glowing fiercely, and for a moment Sophie could feel the raw power radiating from her. "She's rewriting history," Sophie whispered, awed and terrified. "Or at least shaping what will be remembered." Ethan's hand found hers. "We have to stop her, but we must be precise. One wrong move." Before he could finish, Natasha turned, eyes flashing with realization. "So predictable," she said, voice calm, but every word was a blade. "Following me through shadows, touching what should not be touched. You've grown bold, Sophie Reynolds." Sophie raised the pendant. It pulsed, a vibrant, living heartbeat against her chest. "Do not falter," the whisper urged. "The heart of betrayal can be overcome, but the cost is steep." Natasha stepped forward, shard glowing brighter. "Boldness is admirable, but naive. Every move you make echoes across time and space. Every choice carries weight. Do you think your little pendant can protect you now?" Sophie steadied her breath, looking Ethan in the eye. "We don't need protection. We need courage and the truth." For a moment the chamber hung in suspended silence. The light of the shard reflected in the pendant, shadows dancing across Sophie's face. She could feel the threads of betrayal woven tightly around them, but she also sensed the potential to unravel them. If she and Ethan were precise, courageous, and unyielding, the game had changed. Natasha was no longer just a rival. She was the shadow threading through the heart of the archives, testing Sophie, testing the city, testing the fragile balance of all who lived there. And Sophie knew, with every pulse of her pendant, that the first confrontation had only begun. "Threads of betrayal stretch long, child of emerald light," the whisper sang, "and only by tracing them carefully can you save love, life, and legacy." Sophie's eyes hardened. She would not falter. The shadow might test her, might manipulate her, but she was ready. The emerald light would guide her. And when the time came, she would face Natasha, not just with courage, but with every truth she had uncovered. The shattered halls of Aetheryon Prime were not on any map. Carved into living rock and crystal beneath the city, they twisted in impossible geometries, corridors folding back upon themselves like the reflections in a kaleidoscope. The emerald glow of the archives above seeped faintly through fissures in the stone, but here shadows reigned supreme. Sophie Reynolds felt the pulse of her pendant resonate against the cold, vibrating walls, a steady heartbeat guiding her steps. Ethan Cale moved beside her with the quiet precision of a seasoned tracker. The air smelled of ozone and damp crystal, carrying faint echoes of voices, memories embedded in the halls themselves. "Do you hear that?" he whispered, pausing. "It's like whispers trapped in the walls." Sophie nodded, her red hair catching the fractured green light. "The shattered halls remember everything, every choice, every betrayal, every secret. Natasha has been here before. She's left pieces of herself behind, hidden in the echoes." They descended a spiraling staircase of living rock, each step sending faint vibrations through the walls. The pendant pulsed faster, thrumming in her chest. "Follow the echoes, child of emerald light," the whisper urged. "They will guide you to the shadow's heart." At the base of the halls, they came upon a chamber unlike any Sophie had encountered. Crystal columns stretched from floor to ceiling, their surfaces etched with glowing runes that shimmered faintly, responding to their presence. In the center floated a prism of violet and emerald light, rotating slowly, casting fragmented shadows in every direction. Sophie approached cautiously. This is a memory anchor," she murmured. "Someone has woven a past into the very architecture of the halls. Look at the way it responds to us." Ethan stepped forward, eyes narrowed. "And someone else can manipulate it too. Natasha." As if on cue, the prism pulsed violently. Shadows lengthened and twisted, forming the unmistakable figure of Natasha Vera. She stood suspended within the light, her white hair floating as though underwater, amethyst eyes flashing with both amusement and warning. "You're persistent." Natasha's voice echoed through the chamber, amplified and distorted by the prism. "I must admit, I expected you to falter long before reaching this point." Sophie's fingers brushed the pendant. "She tests you. Learn from the echoes," the whisper sang. "She leaves pieces of herself in every shadow." Ethan moved closer, voice firm. "We're not here to falter. We're here to understand. To stop whatever you're planning." Natasha tilted her head. "Stop me." Bold words for a child of the emerald light. "You do not yet understand the threads you tug upon. Every action has consequence. Every decision, a ripple." The chamber shuddered as the prism expanded, filling the room with fractured reflections of Sophie and Ethan. Images layered over centuries of events. In one reflection, Sophie saw herself standing on the surface of a shattered moon, watching the remnants of a once great city crumble beneath the weight of betrayal. In another, Ethan reached for her hand, but the image froze mid-motion, twisted by unseen forces. "The echoes," Sophie whispered. "They're showing us what could be, or what has been. A warning." Natasha's laughter filled the space, low and melodic, carrying a chilling resonance. "Warnings are for those too weak to act. Strength is understanding, manipulation, and, when necessary, control." Sophie's mind raced. The pendant's pulse was urgent now, vibrating through her chest and into her fingertips. She realized that the shattered halls themselves were alive, sentient in a way, and Natasha had learned to shape its memory to her advantage. If they were to counter her, they would need to think not just with logic, but with intuition, feeling, the resonance of the past as much as the present. Ethan laid a hand on her shoulder. "We need to focus. The echoes are telling a story, but we have to follow the thread carefully, or we'll be lost in them forever." Together they moved closer to the prism, letting its fractured light wash over them. Sophie reached out, fingers grazing the rotating surface. Images shifted, scenes of betrayal, acts of love, secret meetings, and whispered promises that spanned centuries. Then a figure emerged from the shadows of the prism itself, a projection of Natasha, or perhaps a shadow of her intent. "Every truth has its cost," the projection warned, "and every bond, every heart, is a tool." Sophie withdrew her hand, breath catching. "She's playing with more than just knowledge," she said. "She's manipulating memory itself. If she succeeds, she could rewrite the past, and the present along with it." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then we stop her, but carefully. One wrong move and we could be trapped in these halls forever, lost to time and shadow." The whisper pulsed strongly. "Follow the light, child of emerald. Trust the echoes, trust each other, and the shadow will reveal itself. The threads of betrayal can be unraveled, but only with courage and clarity." Sophie met Ethan's gaze, determination hardening in her emerald eyes. "Then we unravel them," she said, "one thread at a time. And when we face Natasha, we'll be ready." The shattered halls pulsed in response, as if acknowledging her resolve. Outside, Aetheryon Prime thrummed with life and light, oblivious to the delicate battle unfolding beneath its streets. And within the heart of the halls, Sophie and Ethan stepped further into the echoes, prepared to confront the web of betrayal, manipulation, and the hidden truths that Natasha had laid before them. The deeper Sophie and Ethan ventured into the shattered halls, the more the very air seemed to thrum with secrets. Emerald light flickered along the crystalline walls, shadows bending in ways that defied logic. The whispers embedded in the living rock grew louder, carrying fragments of conversations that had taken place centuries ago, messages and warnings meant for no one, yet somehow resonating with Sophie. "This place is alive," Ethan whispered, voice low but tense. And it knows we're here. Sophie's fingers hovered over her pendant, feeling its steady thrum sync with the vibrations of the hall. The shadow is near, the whisper warned. Deception is woven through the prism. See clearly, child of emerald light. At the heart of the halls, they came upon a chamber dominated by a colossal prism, taller than any building Sophie had seen above ground. Its facets refracted the emerald glow of the archives into dizzying patterns that danced across the walls, creating illusions that toyed with the senses. Inside the shifting light, Natasha's silhouette appeared and disappeared like a ghost, each projection a different version of herself, each holding a different shard of truth, or perhaps lies. "Welcome," a voice echoed from all directions. At once, Natasha. "You've come far. But how far can you truly see?" Sophie squared her shoulders. "We see enough to know what you're doing, and we're not leaving without answers." The prism pulsed, and Sophie felt herself pulled toward one of Natasha's projections. The air shimmered, and suddenly she was standing on a floating shard of crystal high above the shattered halls, looking down at a version of the city that no longer existed. Shadows twisted into humanoid forms, scenes of betrayal and clandestine meetings replaying endlessly. Ethan's voice called to her, distant and distorted. "Sophie, focus, it's a trap." She blinked, and the illusion shattered, leaving her back on solid ground, though her heart raced, as if she had truly been falling. Natasha stepped from the light, her white hair glowing faintly in the emerald sheen. "Illusions are merely guides," she said, voice both mocking and instructive. "Do you think knowledge is gained without challenge, without sacrifice?" Sophie's hand rested on her pendant, feeling its pulse sync with her heartbeat. "The prism tests understanding," the whisper sang, "and only the discerning may pass unscathed." Ethan moved beside her. "We need to figure out which is real, which is manipulated." She's twisting the prism, the halls, everything around us. Natasha's eyes glimmered. "Ah, the human, ever practical, ever grounded. Yet even he cannot perceive the full spectrum of influence. Everything you see, everything you trust, is a question, a mirror. And only when you embrace uncertainty can you find truth." Sophie swallowed, determination hardening in her chest. "Then we find the truth. No matter how many mirrors you throw at us," the prism responded, facets spinning and refracting light into patterns that mimicked Sophie and Ethan's every movement. Shadowed versions of themselves moved in unnatural synchrony, their expressions twisted, eyes glinting with malice. Each step forward required conscious resistance to the illusions that sought to manipulate perception, forcing them to trust intuition over sight. Natasha's voice echoed again. "You may survive this chamber, but the real challenge lies not in perception, but in the choices you make. Every decision carries consequence, every bond a risk." Sophie's gaze met Ethan's. They understood without words. The prism was more than a trap. It was a test of will, of trust, and of love. Their connection, forged through shared danger, became their anchor. Together they moved as one, stepping through the illusions, resisting the pull of shadows, and following the pulse of Sophie's pendant as it guided them toward the prism's core. At last, they reached the center. The core of the prism glowed with a brilliant fusion of emerald and violet, humming with an energy that resonated deep within Sophie's chest. Natasha's real form stood there now, eyes bright with a mix of challenge and admiration. "You have come far," she said, voice softer now, though every word still carried the weight of command. "But the prism reveals only part of the story. Beyond it lies the choices that will shape Aetheryon Prime for centuries to come." Sophie's heart raced, every pulse mirrored by the pendant. "Then we choose wisely, no matter the cost." Natasha's lips curved into a smile. "Wise or brave? Often the two are intertwined, yet seldom aligned. Let us see which path you take, Sophie Reynolds. Let the prism guide you, if you dare. The chamber shuddered as light and shadow intertwined, reality bending around them. Sophie felt the full weight of the challenge, to discern truth from illusion, to confront the shadowy rival who tested not just knowledge, but heart, courage, and loyalty. The whisper pulsed urgently. The heart of deception beats within the prism. See clearly, trust deeply, and remember, love is the only force that can pierce through shadow. Sophie exhaled, steeling herself. With Ethan by her side and the pendant's guidance, she would navigate the prism of deception. And when the light revealed the final truth, she would be ready to face Natasha, not merely as a rival, but as the shadow that defined the path she had chosen to walk. The air of the shattered halls had grown heavier, charged with the weight of past choices and the lingering echoes of whispered secrets. Sophie Reynolds moved carefully, each step measured, as though the halls themselves might recoil from her presence. The emerald glow shimmered along the walls, fractured into a kaleidoscope of light and shadow that seemed to twist with the memories embedded in the living crystal. Ethan Cale followed closely, his senses alert to every vibration in the walls, every whisper caught in the air. "Something's different," he said, voice low. "The halls, they're responding to her. Natasha's influence runs deeper than we thought." Sophie's hand brushed her pendant, feeling the steady pulse that guided her steps. The veil grows thinner. The whisper hummed urgently in her mind. Deception lies in plain sight. The betrayal is not only hers, but one hidden close to the heart. Ahead, a fissure in the hall revealed a small chamber, its walls lined with crystalline panels that shimmered with shifting images. Sophie's breath caught as the panels revealed scenes from their lives, moments of trust, fleeting glances of love, choices made under pressure, and, twisted and darkened, versions of those choices corrupted by shadow. "She's showing us—" "What could be," Sophie murmured, "or maybe what she wants us to fear." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "We have to focus. Fear is a weapon in her hands. She's testing our resolve." As they stepped into the chamber, Natasha's presence became tangible, though she remained unseen. Her voice echoed from every panel, melodic and commanding. "You think you understand, child of emerald light. You think trust alone will shield you from the consequences of power. But even the purest hearts may falter under the weight of betrayal." Sophie's grip tightened. "On the pendant." "The betrayal is closer than you think," the whisper warned. "Look beyond shadow and see the hand that moves your fate." Suddenly, one of the crystal panels shifted, revealing a hidden passage that had not existed moments before. From within it, a figure emerged, not Natasha, but someone Sophie had never expected. Cale Yerney, a human historian known for his integrity and closeness to the city council. His eyes met Sophie's, wide with fear and determination. "Sophie," Cale whispered urgently, "I didn't want to involve you, but Natasha has been manipulating more than just the archives. She's infiltrated the council, twisting alliances, and she's using the city's memory against us." Sophie's mind raced. "All this time, she's been closer than we knew." "And you?" she asked, suspicion creeping into her voice. Cale swallowed. "I tried to stop her quietly, but she knew. If I spoke too loudly, she'd turn the council against me. I had no choice but to act from the shadows." Ethan stepped forward. "Then we're three now. But we need a plan, Kyle. Natasha's power here, it's tied to the halls themselves. Every step we take, she watches, she manipulates, she anticipates." Kyle nodded. "I can guide you to the central chamber of the shattered halls, the nexus of her influence. But it's heavily protected by the prism's illusions, and there's something you need to know. The betrayal I speak of, it's personal. She's counting on it to break you, Sophie." Sophie's chest tightened. The whisper pulsed faster, a warning echoing in her mind. The heart of betrayal is layered. Trust may guide, but pain will sharpen the edge. Prepare, child of emerald, light. As they moved deeper into the halls, the crystal walls began to shimmer with faces, reflections of their allies, friends, even family, all distorted by shadow. Each face whispered temptations, doubts, and fears, a cacophony of manipulation designed to weaken resolve. "She's testing us," Sophie murmured, "and she knows exactly how to wound us through what we love, what we value." Ethan's hand found hers. Then we resist, together. The passage narrowed until they reached the threshold of the central chamber. The prism at its heart spun with violet and emerald light, pulsating in rhythm with Natasha's intent. Sophie felt the weight of countless betrayals pressing against her, the threads of manipulation intertwined with the halls themselves. Natasha appeared before them, stepping from the light like a specter, her amethyst eyes glowing with a predatory intensity. "You've come far," she said, voice smooth as silk. "But do you understand the cost of the choices you make here? Every bond you hold dear, every truth you cling to, will be tested." Sophie lifted her pendant, letting its pulse sink with the rhythm of her own heartbeat. "We understand," she said, voice steady despite the storm of fear and doubt around them. "We know the cost, but we will not falter." The whisper hummed urgently. "The veils are lifting. The shadow is revealed. Every betrayal must be faced, every choice weighed, and the heart of courage will determine the outcome." Natasha's smile widened. "Then step forward, child of emerald light. Face the truth and see if love can pierce." The veils of betrayal. The chamber pulsed, light and shadow dancing, memory and reality intertwining. Sophie inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of destiny pressing against her chest. The first true confrontation had arrived, and nothing would be the same once the veils had been lifted. The central chamber of the shattered halls resonated with a haunting energy, a combination of living crystal and Natasha's carefully woven manipulations. Violet and emerald light fractured across every surface, creating illusions that danced between reality and memory. Sophie Reynolds stood at the threshold, heart pounding, pendant thrumming like a second pulse, guiding her through the chaos. Ethan Cale's hand gripped hers tightly. "Stay focused," he whispered. "The chamber itself will try to deceive us. Every shadow, every reflection is a lie. Accept what your heart knows to be true." Sophie swallowed, her green eyes sharp despite the swirling illusions. "The heart will guide you?" The whisper hummed urgently. "Trust yourself, child of emerald light. The fractured paths may deceive, but your resolve can pierce them." Natasha stepped from the center of the prism, her white hair floating ethereally in the fractured light. "You've come far, Sophie," she said, voice silky and deadly. "But courage alone will not save you. Power, manipulation, foresight, these are the true tools of survival." Sophie lifted her chin. "We don't need your tools, Natasha. We need truth and love." A ripple of light moved through the chamber, and suddenly the illusions solidified. Echoes of Sophie and Ethan's past mingled with distorted visions of Natasha. There were moments of friendship twisted into betrayal, acts of trust contorted into deception. Every reflection was a test, every shadow a potential lie. Natasha moved closer, her eyes locking on Sophie's. "You think you can pierce the heart of deception with emotion? That your bonds are strong enough to resist the manipulation of time, memory, and reality?" Sophie's pulse synchronized with the pendant. "Emotion is power when guided by truth," the whisper urged. "Do not falter, for the fractured heart can heal only through clarity and courage." Ethan stepped forward. "It's true, Sophie. We've faced illusions before, but this is her ultimate test. Keep your mind, but lead with your heart. That's the only way through." Sophie took a deep breath, centering herself. Her gaze swept the chamber. Every twisted reflection, every shadow, seemed to stretch toward her, attempting to ensnare her in doubt and fear. But instead of fleeing, she stepped forward, letting the pendant guide her movements. Light and shadow parted around her as she moved, the illusion struggling to contain her resolve. Natasha's expression shifted, curiosity replacing arrogance. "Interesting. You are stronger than I anticipated." Sophie's voice rang clear. "You've tried to manipulate everything, memories, fear, trust, but you underestimated the strength of what is real." The prism trembled, shards of violet and emerald separating, revealing the true heart of the chamber, a suspended crystal lattice that pulsed with raw energy. Natasha raised her hands toward it, and Sophie realized the full scope of the danger. This lattice was the core of her power within the halls, a nexus that could twist memory, reshape reality, and alter the very perception of time for anyone who dared enter. "You seek control," Sophie said, voice firm. "But control without understanding is chaos, and I will not let you wield this to destroy everything we love." Natasha's eyes flashed with a mixture of admiration and fury. "Bold words, child of emerald light. Let us see if you can follow." Through. The chamber erupted in a storm of light. Shadows lunged like living creatures, attempting to separate Sophie from Ethan, to shatter the bond they had forged. Each step forward was agony, each breath a struggle, yet the pendant pulsed steadily, a reminder of courage and clarity. Sophie reached the lattice, the heart of the prism, feeling its power resonate against her own life force. Natasha moved to intercept, but Sophie's hand shot forward, pendant touching the lattice. Light flared, illuminating every twisted reflection and illusion. The prism convulsed, revealing Natasha's manipulations for what they truly were, threads of deceit, now laid bare. Natasha hissed, stepping back. "Impossible." "How?" Sophie's eyes blazed. "Because truth cannot be twisted forever, because love cannot be broken by shadow, and because courage always finds a way." The lattice's energy shifted under Sophie's touch, neutralized, and the illusions collapsed. Shadows dissipated into nothing, leaving only the raw, living crystal of the halls. Natasha's form flickered, unstable, the prism no longer amplifying her control. "You've undone my work," she whispered, voice trembling for the first time. Sophie's chest heaved, but she did not relent. "We've done more than that. We've reclaimed the halls, Natasha. And the heart of this city will remember that we chose courage over fear." Ethan exhaled, relief washing over him. "It's over, at least for now." Natasha's gaze softened, almost reflective. Perhaps not all is lost. But remember this, Sophie Reynolds, power can return, shadows can rise, and the fractured heart of the world can always be tested again. Sophie and Ethan stepped back from the lattice, the chamber quiet except for the gentle hum of living crystal. The pendant's pulse slowed, resonating in harmony with the halls themselves. They had faced the prism, pierced the heart of deception, and emerged with both courage and clarity intact. Yet Sophie knew Natasha's warning lingered like a shadow. The challenge had been met, but the war of memory, trust, and hidden motives was far from over, and somewhere beyond the halls threads of destiny still waited, weaving the next chapter in a story that would define not just the city, but all who lived within it. The aftermath of the prism's collapse left the shattered halls in a tense silence. Emerald and violet light no longer danced wildly across the crystalline walls, but instead bathed the corridors in a steady, almost contemplative glow. Sophie Reynolds stepped forward cautiously, her pendant pulsing gently, as though the halls themselves were breathing a sigh of relief, or perhaps warning her that peace was fragile. Ethan Cale walked beside her, eyes scanning every shadow, every crack in the living crystal. "It's quiet now," he murmured. "Too quiet. Natasha's influence is weakened, but that doesn't mean she's gone. There's always another thread, another trap waiting." Sophie nodded. "She's clever, yes. But the prism showed me something I didn't fully understand before. The halls keep memories, every betrayal, every secret, every decision, and it's all connected, not just to the present, but to the past. As they navigated deeper, the walls began to shimmer with spectral forms, figures replaying moments long gone, moments Sophie had only heard of in stories. Ancient elves walking alongside humans in the early days of Aetheryon Prime, starships, descending from the sky like silver whales, and strange alien entities observing silently from the void. Each shadowy tableau seemed to pulse with energy, the memories of choices and consequences layered upon one another. Sophie's fingers brushed a wall, feeling the vibrations of history beneath her touch. The past is never gone. The whisper hummed. It waits, watches, and shapes the present. Understand it, and you may find the path forward. Suddenly, one memory seized her attention. A council meeting centuries ago, elves and humans debating the integration of alien technologies into the city. And at the center, a figure that mirrored Natasha, white-haired, amethyst eyes, burning with ambition. Sophie's chest tightened as she realized that Natasha's designs had roots far older than she had imagined. Ethan followed her gaze. "What is it?" "This isn't just about the halls," Sophie said, voice trembling slightly. "Natasha, she's been manipulating the city's history, shaping events for centuries. And these memories, she's tied them to the present." The walls shifted, forming a corridor that led to a massive chamber. In the center floated a holographic map of Aetheryon Prime. Every district, every archive, every council chamber, illuminated in pulses of green and violet. But certain areas shimmered unnaturally, as though overlaid with a shadowy hand. Kyle Yearney appeared from a side passage, eyes wide. "I've been tracking these anomalies," he said urgently. "These are the places she's altered, memories, decisions, alliances, even records of births and deaths. It's subtle, but the effect is profound. Entire narratives of the city have been rewritten in her favor." Sophie moved closer to the hologram, pendant glowing brighter as it resonated with the energy. "She's been playing a long game while manipulating hearts, minds, and history itself. And now we're seeing the echoes of it all at once." A sudden pulse ran through the chamber. Shadows coalesced, forming an intricate web of light and darkness that reached out like tendrils. In the center, Natasha's spectral form appeared. Again, older yet unchanged, her expression unreadable. "You've learned quickly, Sophie," she said, voice layered over centuries of experience. "But history is not easily unraveled. Every action you take ripples through time, and every choice you make can create new shadows." Sophie's eyes blazed with determination. "We're not here to undo everything you've done. We're here to understand it, to see the past clearly, and to prevent you from twisting the future." Natasha's smile was faint, almost sorrowful. "Understanding is only the first step, and knowledge alone will not protect you from betrayal. Shadows linger in the hearts of all, even those you trust most." The whisper pulsed urgently. "Betrayal is closer than you think? Seek the hidden threads, child of emerald light. Only by uncovering the full story can the heart of the city be saved." Ethan placed a steadying hand on Sophie's shoulder. "Whatever's coming, we face it together, shadows or not." Sophie nodded, resolve hardening. "We will follow the keen echoes, uncover the threads, and face whatever Natasha has hidden, no matter how deeply it's buried." As the trio moved through the chamber, spectral memories flickering around them, the weight of centuries pressed down. But within Sophie's chest, the steady pulse of the pendant reminded her that courage and clarity could pierce even the deepest shadows. The past was not merely history, it was a living force, and tonight, in the heart of the shattered halls, Sophie would confront it. The deeper Sophie, Ethan, and Cale ventured into the shattered halls, the more oppressive the air became. The crystal walls pulsed faintly with memory, whispering fragments of conversations and secrets buried over centuries. It was no longer just Natasha's manipulations they faced. It was a web of conspiracies, invisible yet tangible, threading through the very heart of Aetheryon Prime. Ethan's voice broke the heavy silence. I've never seen the Council so compromised. Even the archives, someone's tampering with them, rewriting truths. Cale's brow furrowed. It's more than tampering. Some of Natasha's allies have been embedded for decades, silent, patient, waiting for the right moment to strike. They operate in shadows, manipulating decisions without anyone noticing. Sophie's fingers brushed her pendant, feeling its warm pulse as if it were urging her to see clearly. The conspiracy is layered, the whisper warned. Every shadow hides a thread. Follow the threads, child of emerald light, and the pattern will emerge. Ahead, a chamber opened up larger than any they had seen before. Holographic projections of the city hovered in midair, interlaced with a network of thin, glowing lines that connected people, places, and events. Each line shimmered like a living vein of influence, some pulsing in green, others in violet, and a few flickering in shadowy darkness. Sophie's breath caught as she realized she was looking at the invisible machinery of the conspiracy, the hidden network of Natasha's influence. She's everywhere, Sophie whispered, awe and fury mingling in her voice. This is her empire of manipulation, and we're standing in the center of it. Cale nodded grimly. Every district, every archive, every council member, some are puppets, some are collaborators, and some don't even know they're being used. The scale of this, it's beyond anything I imagined. Suddenly, the shadows in the chamber shifted. Figures emerged, ghost-like yet unmistakably real, agents of Natasha, concealed in plain sight. Their eyes glimmered with recognition of Sophie, yet they moved with silent purpose, unyielding and cold. Ethan drew his energy blade, the emerald light slicing through the dim, flickering glow of the chamber. We knew this wasn't going to be easy, he muttered, voice taut. But we can't let them isolate us. Stick together. Sophie's eyes narrowed. We won't. The threads of this conspiracy are tangled, but every connection can be followed, every betrayal exposed. We just have to be careful. Cale stepped forward, tracing a line on the holographic network. Here, look. These nodes aren't just people. They're information conduits. Natasha has been feeding false histories, twisting memories, and using this network to control perception. If we disrupt the right nodes, Sophie's mind raced. We can expose her, but it's risky. If even one node detects us before we act, she'll know we're coming. From the shadows, a voice echoed, soft, melodic, but layered with menace. Do you really think you can unravel what has been woven for centuries? Natasha's spectral form appeared at the far end of the chamber, eyes glinting like amethyst stars. Every ally you trust, every bond you cherish, I can manipulate. I can turn it against you before you even realize it. Sophie took a steadying breath, letting the pendant's pulse guide her focus. We've learned from your manipulations, Natasha. We see through the layers now. And no matter how silent your conspiracy, the truth will always find its way to the light. Natasha's smile widened, sharp and predatory. Bold words, child of emerald light. But bold words alone do not dismantle centuries of preparation. The chamber trembled, shadows stretching and converging into humanoid shapes, each representing a corrupted ally of Natasha. The conspiracy was alive, a moving entity designed to test courage, trust, and perception. Ethan moved beside Sophie, hand gripping hers. We fight together. No matter the scale of the conspiracy, we're stronger than her shadows. Sophie nodded, green eyes blazing. Then let's follow the threads. We expose every hidden hand, reveal every secret. The heart of Aetheryon. Prime belongs to the truth, not to shadows. Guile extended his hand toward the holographic network. The nodes can be disrupted, but we have to do it carefully. One wrong move, and the entire network will collapse, taking innocent lives with it. Sophie pressed her palm to the pendant, letting its steady pulse synchronize with the rhythm of the halls. Courage guided by truth can pierce the deepest shadows, the whisper sang. Follow the threads, expose the betrayal, protect the innocent, And so, with the hidden network of Natasha's silent conspiracy laid bare before them, Sophie, Ethan, and Cale prepared to navigate the labyrinth of manipulation, knowing that every step forward carried both peril and promise. The shadows had been revealed, but the fight to untangle them and to protect everything they loved was only beginning. The corridors of the shattered halls felt colder now, as if the revelations of the silent conspiracy had leached the warmth from the air. Sophie Reynolds moved carefully, the pendant around her neck pulsing steadily, a heartbeat guiding her through the labyrinth of crystal and shadow. Ethan Cale and Cale Yearney followed close behind, their expressions tight with tension, each step echoing ominously across the crystalline floors. Sophie's mind churned with the knowledge of Natasha's network. Every ally, every trusted figure in Aetheryon Prime had been a potential thread in the web. But something deeper pressed against her consciousness, a whisper of unease that did not come from the halls themselves. "The betrayal is closer than you imagine," the whisper warned, urgent and insistent. "Trust your instincts. Hearts can falter when shadows approach from within." Ahead, a chamber opened unexpectedly, small and dimly lit, its walls reflecting only faint hints of emerald light. Within, a figure stood, waiting. At first, Sophie thought it was another agent of Natasha, but as she stepped closer, her breath caught. It was Cale Yearney, yet not the Cale she knew. This version was colder, eyes glinting with something she hadn't seen before, a mixture of fear and calculated ambition. "Kyle?" Sophie's voice trembled. "What? What is this?" Kyle's lips curled into a wry, almost sorrowful smile. "I didn't want you to find out this way, Sophie," he said softly, yet every word carried weight. "I tried to hide it, tried to protect you, but the truth is unavoidable. I've been working for her, for Natasha, all along, Sophie." Staggered back, disbelief freezing her in place. Ethan stepped forward, energy blade raised, but Sophie held up a hand. Her mind raced. Every memory of Cale's guidance, every shared strategy, every whispered warning now reeled under suspicion. "Why?" Sophie demanded, voice barely more than a whisper, though it cut sharper than any blade. "Why betray everything? Us, the city, the people?" Kyle's eyes flickered, not with malice, but with regret. "Because she has something I cannot resist, something that threatens my family, my past, everything I hold dear. I didn't want to, Sophie. I tried to resist. I truly did." The chamber seemed to close around them, shadows twisting into grotesque shapes, amplifying the weight of the revelation. Sophie's chest tightened, the pendant throbbing in synchrony with the turmoil in her heart. "A thread of betrayal has emerged. Confront it, child of emerald light," the whisper urged. "But the heart must remain steadfast." Ethan's voice cut through the tension. "Sophie, we can't waste time on shock. Even if Cale has been compromised, we still have a mission. The city depends on us, and Natasha is counting on this fracture." Sophie swallowed hard, green eyes scanning Cale's face, searching for any hint of truth beneath the shadow of his deception. "Then tell me everything," she demanded. "No more lies, no more secrets, every detail. If we're going to survive this, I need the full picture." Cale nodded slowly, shoulders heavy. "Natasha approached me years ago when she learned my family had ties to the ancient alien archives. She threatened to erase them, to rewrite our history entirely if I didn't comply. I thought I could balance it, play both sides. But the truth is, I've been a pawn." Sophie's mind reeled. The betrayal was personal, intimate, and yet the sincerity in Kyle's eyes held a fragile thread of hope. Even betrayal can be redeemed if courage and clarity guide the heart. The whisper reminded her. "Then we use it," Sophie said finally, voice firm, green eyes blazing. "We use your knowledge to turn the web of deception back against her. But know this, Cale, if you falter again, there will be no forgiveness." Cale's lips pressed into a thin line, acknowledgement and fear mixing in equal measure. "I understand. Sophie, I won't fail you again." Ethan sheathed his blade, relief flickering across his face. "Then let's get moving. The fractures in Natasha's network are growing unstable. She won't wait for us to recover from this betrayal." Sophie inhaled deeply, letting the pendant's pulse ground her. Betrayal had cut deep, but it had not broken her. With Cale's reluctant allegiance restored and Ethan's unwavering support beside her, she knew the next steps would demand every ounce of courage she possessed. The shattered halls, once a place of shadows and deceit, now became a battlefield of strategy, trust, and redemption. And Sophie Reynolds, child of Emerald Light, would lead the charge, through heartbreak, danger, and revelation, toward a confrontation that would determine the very fate of Aetheryon Prime. The corridors of the shattered halls had never felt so alive. Shadows flickered and shimmered as if aware of every step Sophie Reynolds took. The pulse of her pendant grew stronger, resonating with the latent energy of the city itself. With Ethan, Kyle, and the reluctantly loyal Kyle Yearney beside her, she moved with cautious determination, aware that every shadow could conceal danger or revelation. Kyle traced his fingers along the holographic network they had discovered in the previous chapter. "These nodes," he whispered, "are the key. If we can disrupt just the right ones, we can destabilize her control without collapsing the entire system." Sophie's gaze sharpened. "And the risks?" she asked, voice low but commanding. "Some nodes are anchored to the memories of innocence," Cale replied, his tone weighted with guilt. "Disturb them carelessly, and we'll create chaos that even Natasha could exploit." The chamber ahead glimmered with fractured light, a maze of reflections and illusions that mirrored the complexity of the network itself. The echoes of Natasha's manipulations seemed to resonate from every wall. Fragments of conversations, distorted images of events, and even fleeting glimpses of Sophie's own past decisions. Sophie tightened her grip on her pendant, allowing its warmth to anchor her. "Clarity will guide you," the whisper murmured. "Focus on truth, not fear, and the web of deception will unravel before your eyes." Ethan stepped forward, his energy blade slicing through an illusion that tried to mimic their presence. "Stay alert," he warned. "The illusions aren't just visual. They're emotional. They feed on doubt, fear, and mistrust. Natasha wants us to turn on each other before we even reach her core." Sophie's eyes met Kyle's. "We can't afford hesitation. Lead me to the first node." Cale nodded, pointing to a cluster of nodes hovering like spectral orbs. Each shimmered with a faint violet hue, the energy of deception pulsing through them. "This one controls the memory streams of the council chambers. If we disrupt it, the council will no longer be under her influence, but it will trigger defensive mechanisms." Sophie exhaled and pressed her hand against the nearest orb. A surge of light shot through her, and instantly the chamber around her warped. Echoes of betrayal and manipulation assaulted her senses, whispers of arguments she had never witnessed, secret decisions she had never made. The illusions were vivid, disorienting, even painful. "Focus," Ethan's voice cut through the chaos. "Remember your center." Sophie's heart thrummed with the rhythm of the pendant. She allowed the light to course through her, letting truth guide her hands. Each pulse weakened the node, unraveling the strands of Natasha's influence. But then a voice rang out, soft, seductive, and venomous. "So eager, child of Emerald Light." Natasha's spectral form appeared at the far edge of the chamber, eyes glinting with malice. "Do you think disrupting my network will be enough? Every action has consequences, and every echo of your interference will rebound." Sophie's pulse quickened, but she stood firm. "We're ready for those consequences. The people of Aetheryon Prime deserve the truth, and I won't let you control them through fear or deceit." The nodes flared violently, projecting holographic duplicates of Natasha, each more lifelike than the last. They moved with uncanny precision, attempting to distract, to intimidate, to sow doubt in Sophie's mind. Yet, with each step, each pulse of the pendant, Sophie severed another strand of manipulation, revealing fragments of reality beneath the illusion. Kyle guided them through the maze, tracing lines in the holographic interface to redirect energy, pulses, and disable the more dangerous nodes. "Keep going," he urged. "We're close, almost at the core." As the team advanced, Sophie realized the halls themselves were responding to her determination. Crystalline surfaces shifted, forming a path toward the central nexus. The echoes of Natasha's deception grew louder, whispering past failures, tempting her with imagined betrayals, but Sophie's resolve did not waver. Finally, they reached a chamber of immense scale. The core of Natasha's network hovered suspended. In the air, a pulsating lattice of light and shadow, nodes spinning in chaotic rhythm. Sophie's heart raced as she approached. She could feel the magnitude of the energy, the depth of the manipulation, and the power it gave Natasha to twist perception across the city. Ethan stepped beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "This is it," he said softly. "The heart of her deception. Once we disrupt this, the city's memory, history, and truth will be free, but be prepared. Natasha will fight back with everything she has." Sophie's fingers hovered over the central lattice. Her mind steadied, the pendant's pulse syncing with her own heartbeat. Courage guided by clarity, the whisper sang, "Pierce the heart of deception, and the echoes will reveal the truth." She pressed forward. Light flared, and the lattice shuddered violently, projecting Natasha's most potent illusions yet. Figures of allies turned enemies, visions of failure, and whispers of fear assaulted their senses. Yet Sophie held fast, using her pendant and inner strength to unravel the threads of deceit. One by one, nodes blinked out, their influence dissipating into nothingness. The illusions faltered, leaving only Natasha herself, spectral and furious. "Impressive," she hissed. "But do you truly believe you can undo centuries of manipulation? The echoes you've touched are only the beginning. Shadows remain." Sophie met her gaze with unwavering determination. "Then we'll face those shadows, one by one. Truth cannot be silenced, Natasha. And we will see this city free." The chamber trembled, not with fear, but with the promise of revelation. The echoes of deception were weakening, and the path toward confronting Natasha directly was finally in sight. The shattered halls trembled, as if aware that the final reckoning had begun. Sophie Reynolds moved deliberately, every step resonating with the pulse of her pendant, guiding her through the fractured corridors toward the heart of Natasha's influence. The air itself felt heavy, alive with the lingering echoes of betrayal, manipulation, and centuries of secrets waiting to erupt. Ethan Cale walked beside her, energy blade humming softly. "This is it," he said, voice low but steady, "the core of Natasha's domain. She knows we're coming." Cale Yearney followed closely, eyes scanning every shadow. "Her remaining allies will converge here," he warned. "We'll face more than illusions this time, actual resistance. And the closer we get, the more the halls themselves will resist us." Sophie's green eyes glimmered with determination. "We've unraveled her network. We've exposed her manipulations. Now we strike at the heart of the deception. No hesitation, no doubts." The corridors opened into a massive chamber, its ceiling vanishing into shadow, its floor a mosaic of shimmering crystal. At the center, Natasha's form hovered, larger and more imposing than ever. Her eyes burned with amethyst fire, and her presence radiated authority and menace. Around her, tendrils of energy spiraled outward, connecting to remaining nodes that pulsed like the heartbeat of the city itself. "You've come far," Natasha said, her voice echoing with layers of time and manipulation, "but the convergence of shadows is complete. Every secret, every fear, every betrayal you've uncovered, all of it feeds me. And now you face the culmination." From the darkness, figures emerged, agents, manipulated council members, even spectral echoes of past. Allies, all twisted by Natasha's influence. Each moved with purpose, forming a ring around Sophie and her companions, their eyes cold. Unyielding, Ethan stepped forward, energy blade slicing through the shadows. "We face them together. Don't falter. Don't hesitate." Kale's hands danced across the holographic interface of the floor, redirecting residual energy flows. "I can weaken their connections to her," he said. "It'll give us an opening, but it won't last long. Be ready." Sophie inhaled deeply, feeling the pendant's pulse synchronize with the rhythm of the halls. "Courage and clarity," the whisper intoned. "The heart of deception is vulnerable only to those who see truth fully." She raised her hand, focusing on the largest node above Natasha. Light flared from the pendant, cascading through the chamber in emerald waves. Shadows shrieked and twisted, trying to flee, but the light pierced them, unraveling illusions and corrupt influences. Natasha's voice sharpened, cold and slicing through the noise. "Do you think light alone can undo centuries of manipulation? I am every whisper, every secret, every shadow you fear." Sophie's pulse steadied. "You are nothing without your threads," she said firmly. "We've cut them. One by one they fall, and your illusions will fail." The tendrils of energy that bound Natasha's remaining network began to fray, sparks of violet and green cascading into the crystalline floor. The agents and manipulated allies faltered, confusion flickering across their faces. Some broke free entirely, leaving the chamber while others collapsed in shock as the influence was severed. Ethan moved to Sophie's side, placing a hand over hers. "Now, Sophie, the final strike." Sophie concentrated, channeling every ounce of energy from the pendant, her own inner strength, and the trust she held in her allies. Emerald light erupted from her hands, converging on Natasha's core form. The chamber shook violently, fragments of crystal raining down like starlight, reflecting the chaos of battle. Natasha screamed, a sound that was both rage and disbelief. "No, you cannot undo what I am. I am eternal." "Not eternal," Sophie whispered, voice unwavering, "because even shadows must face the light." The energy surged, enveloping Natasha's form. The spiraling tendrils of power dissolved, her influence collapsing into nothingness. The chamber brightened as the halls responded to the truth being restored, memories realigned, and manipulation undone. When the light faded, Natasha was gone. The air felt lighter, almost breathable for the first time in centuries. The remaining echoes of her deception lingered faintly, but the city itself seemed to sigh in relief. Sophie dropped to her knees, exhausted but triumphant. Ethan knelt beside her, energy blade dimmed, eyes filled with respect and relief. Kyle exhaled, a mixture of relief and guilt on his face. "It's over, for now." Sophie's gaze swept over the restored chamber, green eyes gleaming with quiet determination. "For now," she agreed, "the shadows may return someday. But tonight, truth stands unbroken, and we protect it, always." Outside the shattered halls, the first light of a new dawn touched Aetheryon Prime. Emerald reflections danced across the city, a symbol of hope, courage, and the resilience of those who dared confront the shadows. Sophie rose, pendant still, glowing faintly, ready to face the future, a future she would shape with her own hands. The dawn over Aetheryon Prime was unlike anything Sophie Reynolds had ever witnessed. Light fractured through the crystalline towers, scattering emerald reflections across the city, echoing the pulse of her pendant. The shattered halls, once a prison of shadows, now glowed with soft luminescence, each corridor whispering fragments of restored truth. The city itself seemed to breathe in relief, the weight of centuries of manipulation finally lifted. Sophie stood atop the tallest spire, her flowing green robes catching the morning wind. The pendant around her neck throbbed gently, synchronizing with her heartbeat, a steady reminder of courage, resilience, and clarity. She gazed across the cityscape, a sea of crystalline towers, alien spires, and verdant parks where elves, humans, and extraterrestrials now mingled freely, a testament to coexistence and the fragile unity she had fought to protect. Ethan Cale approached, his energy blade now sheathed, a rare smile on his face. "The network is fully dismantled," he said. "The Council is free. Your people are free. The city can finally breathe without fear of deception." Sophie turned to him, green eyes shining with gratitude. "We did it together, Ethan. None of this would have been possible without your strength and loyalty. And Kyle, even with his betrayal, he risked everything to help us at the end." From the shadows of the spire's base, Kyle Yearney stepped forward. His expression was weary but resolute, a mixture of guilt and redemption etched across his features. "I made mistakes," he admitted quietly. "But seeing the city free, seeing the truth shine through, it was worth every risk. Thank you, Sophie, for letting me make it right." Sophie nodded, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Redemption isn't given, Cale. It's earned, and you earned it today." The city around them shimmered with signs of life. Citizens emerged from hiding, relieved and cautious, yet filled with awe at the light washing over the towers. Markets reopened, parks filled with laughter, and alien skycraft glided gently between the spires. The city's heart was alive again, vibrant and untethered from the shadows of deception. Yet Sophie knew the true victory was not just the physical freedom of Aetheryon Prime, it was the restoration of trust, the delicate threads that bound communities and species together. Natasha's manipulations had sown fear and doubt for centuries, and now, for the first time, Sophie could see the potential for a lasting harmony. Her pendant pulsed stronger, signaling a presence, a whisper of ancient guidance. "Child of emerald light, you have done more than dismantle deception. You have reminded the city, the people, and yourself that courage and truth are eternal. Guard them well." Sophie inhaled, the weight of responsibility heavy yet empowering. "We will guard it," she promised aloud, her voice carrying across the city. "I will protect this light, and I will ensure that shadows never dominate our hearts again." Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder, a grounding presence. "And we'll be beside you, Sophie, every step of the way." Cale nodded, his expression softened by newfound determination. "Whatever comes next, we face it together. No more lies, no more shadows." A gentle breeze swirled around them, carrying the scents of alien flora, crystal reflections, and the faint metallic tang of the city's energy conduits. It was a new dawn, not just in time but in spirit, a moment of renewal that echoed across generations. Sophie lifted her gaze to the horizon, emerald light reflecting in her eyes. Her heart swelled with hope, courage, and love, a love that was not romantic alone, but the profound bond of trust, loyalty, and shared purpose. She had confronted betrayal, illusions, and manipulation, and emerged not just victorious, but wiser, stronger, and radiant in her truth. The city beneath her stirred with life, the people moving in harmony, the alien skycraft painting streaks of color across the morning sky. The shattered halls were no longer fractured in shadow. They reflected the unity, courage, and resilience of those who refused to surrender to darkness. Sophie breathed deeply, the pendant's pulse steadying, resonating with the rhythm of the city. "This is the dawn of the emerald light," the whisper intoned, gentle and proud. "And it begins with you." As the first true sunlight touched the tallest crystalline spire, Sophie felt a warmth in her chest, a certainty that the battles fought, the shadows faced, and the truths revealed had forged a legacy that would endure. With Ethan and Cale at her side, she stepped forward from the spire, descending into the streets of Aetheryon Prime, ready to face the future, defend the light, and embrace the dawn that she had earned. The emerald light would shine forever.